Yeah, it's always good for someone to share one's experience in this pandemic period, especially as a frontline worker. For me, I would say it was a bit challenging, but I trust and believed God. And that is why I can still stand to talk about it. Initially, at the beginning of this pandemic, I was still a student, a final year student nurse. You can understand what it means to be a final year student nurse. First of all, to be a student, you want to behave in a manner that people can sign your book. You want people to have good feedback of you. You have mentors, you have managers, you have other nurses around, and you want to humble yourself to all of them, and in most cases they use you. So at the beginning of this pandemic, I was placed on a ward, a rehabilitation ward, that basically most of their patients were long time staying patients. So they didn't need to have more patients like in, you will say, A&E, where the flow is very rapid and quick. So we've had about COVID. We were so scared about it, but we never knew we will have anything to do with it on our ward because of the kind of patients we had. Stroke patients majorly, and neuro patients, those with brain injuries and what have you. Then it so happened that there was one of our patients that was about to be discharged, and suddenly a relative from Spain visited him, and that was it. After few days, he started spiking temperature. We did everything, and he started coughing as well. So we didn't know about COVID then. We didn't know much about it. We didn't know much about protection, about PPE. So for me, I was always working under supervision, under a mentor, and I was always following my mentor about. And my mentor is a senior nurse who, when this patient was moved to the side room out of the general bay or out of the general ward, my mentor was always going in there with minimal PPE, just the surgical mask. There was no mask fitting because anyone that was to look after COVID patient had to go through a mask fitting. I went in. So most of the time, my mentor will go into the side room, look after this patient, come out. We will be working together using the same computer, basically facing each other, talking. And so with other staff, after some time, a lot of them started calling up sick, going on isolation, but I couldn't. Even my mentor went, I couldn't, because the emphasis for me was to make up my hours, because I needed a particular number of hours for that placement before I will be signed into the register. However, without being on the ward, following my shift pattern, my allocated shifts, I will not be able to meet those hours. So when other people called up sick, went into isolation, I was still there working. And for a few times, I had a runny nose, sneezing, and at a stage, there was no money coming in because of the placement. I had to enroll into King's College Bank. My first job there, I went in as hair care assistant. I discovered that it wasn't the ward I booked for that they gave me. So I actually was moved into another ward to work, and that ward I looked at during the handover, I just checked all of them were COVID. One patient was already dead, and they couldn't find, they had not been able to find a porter that will remove him. They were still in the verge. He died overnight, and when I came in, I was like a stranger. That was my first time of being there. I wanted to earn money, and suddenly I was allocated 9 patients. After that, they changed their mind. They gave me 10. Among the allocation given to me was the dead patient. So I looked into myself. You know, I haven't been mask fitted. I didn't know much about PPE. I'd had people dying. So I decided, no, this time around, I am going to ask them that to excuse me, that I won't be able to do this job because I had not been mask fitted. I spoke to the nurse in charge about my not having been mask fitted, and that I had a vulnerable husband. I said it to be excused, and then she got angry. Why should I book a job and not do it? Before I knew it, she was angry. I will call the site manager. I will do this. I will do that. So I said, whatever happens, I have responsibility for my health. So I said I was going. I left. So the next day, I received a letter that I've been banned, trust-wide banned, that I will not work in King's College. Because of that, I said that was fine. And then I continued with my placement, going. No time, I was sneezing. But suddenly we went on Easter break. And after the Easter break, we were to return to placements. They said the NMC or the government decided that all third year students will be placed on extended placements. If you opt in to help with COVID patients, you will get that job paid band 4. I opted in because I had nothing else to do. I opted in. It was so hard. My husband was not, his business wasn't moving because at that time, a lot of places were shut down. So I had no option than to opt in to help with COVID patients. Luckily for me, I was placed in Imperial because since my first year, second year, I had always been trained by Imperial Trust. And then I got that job as band 4 on the same ward where I was. And thank God, without the in everything, we give God the glory, because I believe that when men shall be saying there is a casting down, we, God's children, will be saying there is a lifting up. So I really saw that even though in the midst of this COVID, when it was not easy for people, that God saw me through, and that was the time I got a job. And that helped me to finish my hours needed by the NMC. And now, by God's grace, I kept on praying and believing God, because God is always there for his people. And that opted for extended placement, we were giving automatic offer. So moving me from student nurse to registered nurse, that is very interesting. And it takes patience. It was challenging though, but God saw me through. And I want to appreciate God. I also want to appreciate the family of St. Paul, because usually when we come to church physically like we used to do, we pray together. But at this time, everywhere was shut down. Interestingly, our church was still on. We were still praying together. And to this day, I must say that God has been faithful. And I thank God I was able to overcome. And I pray that it will be so for every member of St. Paul's.